Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show and another episode of our Tactical Breakdown series, our show in which we look at the players that have been linked to Arsenal in a statistical and analytical way with the help of some expert insight. Today's show coinciding with some pretty big breaking news regarding Chelsea. If you're wondering if we're going to discuss that, we aren't on this show, but we surely will do in an upcoming one. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled to the channel. Don't worry, we will not be scooting over such big news so soon. But in today's show, and this show specifically, what we will be doing is discussing Fabian Ruiz, who is a Spanish international player for Napoli, been linked with Arsenal for around 16 million, which is a ridiculously low fee considering the quality of player that he is. Now, if you are new to the channel and you've never seen one of these shows before, we've been doing them for quite some time. Quite a few summer and January windows have passed while we've done these. Effectively, what they are is they're deep dives into transfer targets. We get expert insight from people who know all about the players. We do statistical comparisons with players in their position, and today we're going to be comparing him to the likes of Toyin Koopmeiners and Granit Xhaka and Yuri Tielemans as well, often players that have also been linked with Arsenal, playing similar positions at the top of their game. And then at the end of the show, what we do is we jump into the chat box and get a lot of your thoughts and feelings. So today we start off the show by getting some expert insight from Cos Pandy, who is the editor-in-chief for Get Italian Football News. And it's fair to say he's quite a fan of the player.
Things stand, it does look like Fabian Ruiz will be leaving Napoli and Serie A as a whole in summer, and that's because of his contract situation. Because his contract expires in the summer of 2023, and Napoli operate on a very, sort of a strict wage limit where they do not pay more than a certain limit to whatever sort of player we are talking about. They refuse to budge on that wage limit in the case of Lorenzo Insigne, and I don't see them doing anything different when it comes to Fabian. And since they do not want to lose a player of his quality for free, they will probably look to sell him in the summer and make a profit on him. And Napoli are a very profit-oriented club in a way because they are the most well-run club in Italy in terms of finances. They are currently the most well-off club in Serie A in a financial sense. And I think, as far as Fabian Ruiz goes, I think he is very much suited to a system which revolves around positional play. And I think that's what Mikel Arteta's Arsenal are trying to move towards, or they already are pretty much. And that is because Fabian Ruiz's most underrated quality has been his versatility on the pitch. He can play defensive midfield. He did that under Carlo Ancelotti. He can play out wide as well, which he did under Ancelotti once again. He's been playing, as a deep line box to box midfielder this season, but he can often be the sole defensive midfielder as well. He's played in the attacking midfield role, so he's a complete package when it comes to playing in the midfield. His strengths are progressing the ball from deep, and we saw the goal against against Lazio that he recently scored. That he's got a fantastic left foot in him. He's really good in the final third when it comes to picking those final passes, and I think that's something Arsenal lacked this season because a lot of times you've seen that their overall play has been great, but they sometimes just fall short in the final third. And I think Fabian Ruiz will be an asset in that regard in terms of bringing in that final pass, bringing in the sort of extra flair in the final third. And I think you talk of Granit Xhaka, Thomas Partey, or even Martin Odegaard. I think Fabian Ruiz is a sort of player who can play all three roles, depending on what game you're playing, what system you're playing. He can play out wide. I mean, he's not as quick as Bukayo Saka, but yeah, he's quick. He's got a fantastic pair of feet, and I think he's just a complete package. And let alone Arsenal, I think he will be a fantastic signing for any club. So I think, yeah, if Arsenal are looking to sign him, they shouldn't really be thinking twice about it because he's, for me, the best midfielder in Serie A.
Oh no, we're muted. Sorry, we've sorted that out. There's quite high praise there from Cos because, of course, describing him as the best midfielder in Serie A is quite high praise when you consider how many players are currently plying their trade in the Italian league. We're not done, however, though, with the expert insight, and very happy also to get some expertise from Rich Hall, who you've probably seen on the channel feature a number of times, writer and contributor to Inter Milan and Fiorentina, and of course the Gentleman Ultra and Football Italia. So without further ado, let's get Rich's thoughts on Fabian Ruiz.
Fabian Ruiz is a player that certainly you couldn't stand Arsenal being after. There's no question about that. A lot of the Italian media now are reporting that because his contract ends in 2023, there should be a reasonable price, even as low as 16 million euro, that could see him go. That would be quite impressive to get a player of his caliber for that value. The reason being is he can play extremely. He's quite versatile, but it's become more deeper as his career has gone on, and played more into the hole. Left-footed player, great range of passing. To be fair to Granit Xhaka, he's just an upgrade on Xhaka. It's as simple as that. I think that his passing range is probably a bit more crisper, a bit quicker sometimes. Obviously his upbringing in Spain has really given him that sort of ability to move the ball quickly at pace. He's also got a shot on him, and if you want to look at the goal he scored against Lazio the other week and Google that, that's certainly something that was extremely impressive. And he has got that in his locker. Criticism is that maybe he doesn't get as many assists and goals as he should do, but that's explained really because he sits a bit deeper. Been a very good part of a Napoli team where I think he's got way over 100 appearances now. And at 25, that's fantastic. You're looking at the situation with Luciano Spalletti's in Napoli this season, where it's an end of a cycle of a team. Certainly not a player they will want to let go, but if he's saying he's not going to sign the contract, then there's nothing they can do about that. So they really are at a standoff. It will be one of the ones, like I said, that the Partenopei will not want to lose, because they're at the end of a cycle, really, and they're already losing players like Lorenzo Insigne at the end of the season. So there's real questions around Napoli, but that's a different story, not for Arsenal to worry about. Arsenal can really look at this as to potentially getting a signing who will be coveted by more people. I mean, the Italian media are now talking about Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United this morning. So I think it's one of those situations where they would have to move quickly. Certainly would suit this Arteta's Arsenal, I think. I think he could be a real asset. And, continue to improve his game. He's certainly a player that, he's still learning. And potentially, if you did, you could move him around in the three as well. He's certainly got the capabilities. He's not just someone who has to sit deep in a hole and stop the play. He's not that sort of player. Whilst he can do that job, I think there's more to his game. For me, he's probably his best position would be in a midfield three. You have one that sits deep, someone just at the other side, just to sort of integrate that play and help in that sort of way. So, yeah, I think it's a great signing for Arsenal if it can get it through, but move quickly. That's because there's more teams looking at him.
A massive thank you to Rich Hall. You can find him on Twitter at RichHall80, and you can find Cos on Twitter at Cos_Pandy. Make sure you are following both of them, Cos_Pandy17, I should say. So please make sure you're giving them both a follow if you want to keep up to date with all Italian football news and needs. And I'm sure if you ask them a question, they'd be more than happy to answer it as well. If you are just tuning into the live version of the show, we just had our expert insight regarding Fabian Ruiz, which means we now move on to the second part of the show, which is the statistical focus and comparison. For the benefit of today's show, we're going to be comparing Fabian Ruiz with Toyin Koopmeiners, Youri Tielemans, and Granit Xhaka. There's a reason why I chose these players. One, because they're all players that play in a similar role and would fit that kind of advanced 6/8 that we've got Granit Xhaka currently playing in. Koopmeiners was a link to Arsenal in the past before signing for Atalanta, where he's only done even better since moving from RZ. And Tielemans, of course, is another player that's been linked to Arsenal. He's very different stylistically to Fabian, despite playing in the same kind of position, so we can see some of the comparisons. Looking at the heat maps, and of course, these are for their league seasons this year. The first thing that you notice is that Toyin Koopmeiners is an absolute animal from his heat map and seeing him all over the field for Atalanta. But that Fabian, quite interestingly, plays more to the left-hand side, but when he moves to the right, that's when he gets more advanced. And you often see him coming in from the right-hand side on his left foot, to then strike the ball into shooting opportunities, but does tend to favour the left, and his position's more left-hand side-wise. But when he does go forwards, can skew across the field and has that freedom to do so, and that's important in his play. If you give him that freedom, he can be a much better player. You compare that to Youri Tielemans, who's mostly played on the right-hand side for Leicester this season. Granit Xhaka, of course, very much so on the left. But interestingly, you look at that heat map in the opposition's half, you see the new kind of role that he's been occupying under Mikel Arteta. Looking at their defensive duels, what we're seeing here is a 64.6% win rate for Fabian, which is better than all others on this list. Isn't as high in terms of frequency as Toyin Koopmeiners, but nearly 20% higher in terms of the number of duels that he is winning in comparison to the Dutch midfielder. Going into interceptions, he comes out quite well again, 3.8, around the same figures as what we're seeing the rest, 3.83 for Tielemans, 3.92 for Toyin Koopmeiners, and ever slightly more for Xhaka at 4.2, all in the same ballpark. Losses comes out very well, only 7.41 losses per game in comparison to Toyin Koopmeiners, for instance, nearly double with 11.89. Only 22% of those, however, are in his own half, whereas Fabian Ruiz is losing the most of his losses in his own half, showing that actually the greater percentage of those that aren't are in the oppositions when he likes to go forward. Tielemans and Xhaka, though, coming out slightly higher than Fabian in terms of losses. Moving over to recoveries, and again, he comes out quite well, in the same ballpark as Koopmeiners and Tielemans in the 6s, and it's Granit Xhaka that's high with the recoveries in the 8s, definitely coming out on the highest part of this. Interestingly, though, like we saw with the opposition's half and the own half for the earlier losses, what we're seeing here is those recoveries in the opposition half aren't happening so much. He tends to recover the ball in his own half. And I mean, you can look at that in a positive and a negative way. In terms of pressures, again, comes out well. 17 pressures per game and has one of the highest, in fact, the highest success rate of pressures. Once that, basically what that means is when he pressures the ball, his side win the ball back within 5 seconds. And 32.6% of the pressures he gets involved in tend to lead to Napoli regaining possession. He comes out with the second highest number of those, only behind Koopmeiners, who we saw from his heat map does like to get all over the field. Moving into the passing area of the comparison, and this is where Fabian really starts to shine. 91.8% passing accuracy and completing more passes, considerably more, and attempting more than all of his contemporaries in this list, quite considerably so. And when you're beating Granit Xhaka's passing stats, it certainly is something to take notice of. Looking at his long passing, it again comes out really well. Second highest number of long passes, 5.98 behind Koopmeiners, 6.38, but the highest accuracy, nearly 80%, 78.5% of his long passes reaching the target is ridiculously accurate. Passing into the final third coming out really well as well, passing more so into the final third than any other of his contemporaries in this list here. This is per 90, 11.41, 85.7% as well of them hitting the target, which when you're beating Granit Xhaka in terms of passing accuracy, very, very impressive. Pass into the box, whilst he's not as direct as Tielemans or Koopmeiners in this sense, still pretty good with 2.03. And then you look at the accuracy of those passes that reach their target, 80.5. Forward to backward pass ratio, about double the number of forward to backward passes, but Koopmeiners coming out really impressively here with nearly 4 times the number of forward passes to backward passes. Looking at the dribbling, and this is obviously something I know a lot of people will be interested in, is how mobile he is. 1.14 is the second lowest amount of dribbles attempted of the 4. However, what is interesting about this, not only the fact that he completes 56.5% of them, which is the highest success rate for dribbles on this list, is when we look at progressive runs with the ball and actually progressing the ball from 1/3 of the pitch to the other, he comes out with the highest amount. So despite not dribbling it the most, when he does, it's dribbles that matter at 1.53 progressive runs compared to Koopmeiners 1.35. And then you've got Tielemans and Xhaka with the lower end of the spectrum. And the last statistic to look at on this list is, of course, shooting. You tend to see Fabian shoot from a very small area of the pitch, which is tending to be quite central. But he's got his 6 goals this season from that range, all from outside the box. He is a threat, and if he is able to get the ball into that position, he can be looked at as a dangerous opposition player. 1.43 shots per game with a 31% success rate. Granit Xhaka this season, meanwhile, has only had 1 of his shots hit the target, leading to a 9.1% success rate. Youri Tielemans is the most frequent shooter with 2.3, but isn't as accurate as Fabian or Koopmeiners, who managed to get 31 and 35% between them. And that is all of the statistics for Fabian Ruiz. Comes out very well. And I think that actually what we saw there from Rich Hall's description of when he said he's basically he's a good upgrade on Xhaka, that's pretty accurate. He is a very, very decent upgrade on Granit Xhaka, and he significantly improves in passing, in dribbling, less mistakes, a threat from outside the box. He's a very, very good midfielder. And I agree with Koz at the moment that you would look at him as probably up there as an arguable best central midfielder in Serie A right now. And if Arsenal can get him for a reported 16 million, that's a ridiculously good fee that Arsenal are able to do. We move on to the final part of the show, which is, of course, getting your thoughts and your feedback on Fabian Ruiz. I know that there's big news dropping about Chelsea, but if we can try and keep the conversation angled towards Ruiz, we will be discussing Chelsea in another show. So let's have a look at some of what you were saying about Fabian. Vinny says, Tom, you were like a salesman for Fabian. His passing stats are incredible. Obviously a weaker league, but he looks a real player. Ed says, in my limited number of games I've seen him, he seemed highly skilled and hardworking, but not overly physical. Does the new Xhaka role require that, or does Xhaka just play it that way? I think the difference of what you see and what we notice in Granit Xhaka's game is that he's very good at winning fouls in his own half. Now, that's good, but the reason why he does that is because he hasn't necessarily got the technical skill or the burst of acceleration to get away from his opponents. That is slightly different for Fabian, and that's why you see his progressive run statistics so impressively higher than all of the players that we looked at comparing him to today, is that he can get away from players. He's still quite tall, he's quite rangy, he's got that ability to hold players off he needs to. Sure, in a couple of games you may not see that part of his game as much, and maybe in Serie A it's not as called upon as it would be in the Premier League. But I think that what you get in all of the positives of his passing and his technical skill, that kind of makes it worth it than what you get in terms of losses of the physicality side of his game. Nambro says, listen, Tom, I've said last time, second half of the season, we are doing a title challenge. Unbelievable scene. Wayne Sage, thank you so much for the donation, mate. Really kind. Tom, that's the stats say to me that Xhaka is somewhat underrated. Look, Wayne, I think that we all know that Granit Xhaka can offer Arsenal plenty. The issue with Granit Xhaka has always been the negative aspects of his game, the hot-headedness, the poor timing of challenges, the mistakes. If he was to get rid of those, he would be without question one of the best central midfielders in the league. But the problem is there are so many of those negatives and so many of those issues that happen outside of what he's good at, which is his passing and his forward movement and the way in which he links play together and gets the ball from one third of the pitch to the other, then we'd be looking at him as a really good player. But the problem is there's so many negatives associated to Granit Xhaka that you can't get that. Fabian not only improves on all of Xhaka's positives, but he doesn't have those negatives, which makes him a really, really attractive player. Glenn says, Fabian is great value at 16 million and well worth a punt, but I'd really love to see us go big and push for a Jude Bellingham if we get the top four. The absolute dream fits. But if we can go and get someone like Jude Bellingham over Fabian Ruiz, I'm all in agreement. But for 60 million pounds, why not get him and then still try and get Bellingham? It makes no sense not to go for someone for that amount of skill. Talex says, is Fabian more mobile and agile than Xhaka? He's more mobile than Xhaka, but there are a lot more central midfielders out there that are more mobile than him. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, you could see with the progressive run stats how he moves the ball and he moves it in important areas, both on it and when he passes it as well. Clement says Barella is world class rather than Ruiz. Why not get Barella? I doubt Inter Milan will be having any entertainment around the idea of selling Barella, and the cost, the difference that you would see in price would not reflect the difference between the two players. There's not that much difference in an argument between Ruiz and Barella for who's the better central midfielder. Barella probably just about eases it in terms of this season and consistently, but Fabian Ruiz is pretty darn close, and for a considerably less price, you would seemingly go for someone who is available like Ruiz over Barella. Neil says, Koopmeiners, is he available for some of the window too? I would love Fabian. If Koopmeiners is available to go, Arsenal should definitely be looking at him as a possible option too. Ali says, I'd love him at Arsenal, but something just screams a return to Spain. Have a bad feeling he'll end up at Barca, who have long been interested, or maybe Real Madrid. Both clubs are said today, according to the Italian press, to be interested in him as well. So if Arsenal want him, they are going to have to move quickly. What we do understand is that Arsenal's representatives have met with his agents. We learned that from according to the Mirror. So if that is the case, Arsenal are laying the groundwork for this deal, and fingers crossed it gets done. We're going to wrap things up there. Of course, as I said already, there's some big news regarding Chelsea dropped today. If you're watching this on playback, you'll already very much know what that is. We are going to be discussing that in a future show, either later on this evening or tomorrow morning in the 8 a.m. show. So make sure you tune in for that. But do drop a like on this video. Do share it around and tell people where they can find out loads of information about Fabian Ruiz with the help of statistics and expert insight. You'll be able to find this show happening more as we get closer to the summer transfer window and throughout the window as well. And if you are new to the show, make sure you subscribe and drop a like on the video to let me know that you've enjoyed it and appreciated it. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.